You want more Sega Ninjas? You got 'em. You don't want more Sega Ninjas? You get 'em anyway! For today I am playing a thing called Shadow Dancer, The Secret of Shinobi. Released in 1990 for the Genesis, this game chronicles an interim adventure of Joe Musashi. Or does it? You see, Shadow Dancer's protagonist is determined by region. In the export countries, it is indeed Joe behind the mask. In Japan, however, he's identified as Joe's son, Hayate. Whichever member of the Musashi clan this is, Shadow Dancer is notable among the console shinobis for being very arcade-style. While not a direct port of the arcade version, all the levels and bosses are Genesis originals, the home version carries over the mechanics almost exactly, meaning no life bar, smart bomb-style ninjutsu, and Yamato the dog. He's a good boy. What I like best about Shadow Dancer is its wonderful sense of tension. One-hit death means you're never more than a butterfly's fart away from getting kicked back to the last checkpoint, and the frequently devious enemy placement likes to throw you from one clutch situation into the next. So, with Neo Zed in a rebuilding phase, we're off to take down the new threat of Union Lizard. Can Joe, or possibly Hayate, stand up to the dark powers of reptilian collective bargaining? The answer may not surprise you. Joe? Or Hayate? You got a little something on your arm there. AD 1997 New York. AD 1997 New York City. Having vanquished the evil crime empire Neo Zed, Shinobi was not heard from again. His combat ninja skills were not needed in a peaceful world. But a new threat arose in a reptilian form that lived on vicious instinct alone. The colossal monster moved slowly and quietly, and its attack was relentless. The souls unfortunate enough to live became hostages. Mass panic swept the streets. It remained only for Shinobi to take action, the ninja of the shadows. His weapons were stealth and quickness of attack, his only allies when facing overwhelming force. Relying on ninja weapons and magic, Shinobi fought on, assisted by his faithful dog. This is the story of their defiance. And we'll get a little bit of a track before we kick things off. I'll give you kind of a basic idea of what we're going to be dealing with here. This is from the third stage, so we won't be seeing this part specifically for a little while. In the lower right, you'll see Save. Normally, to finish a stage, you have to rescue all the hostages before you can leave, but since you're stuck on an elevator there, that part doesn't have any. Alright then, let's look at our options. Normal mode gives us full access to our usual range of weaponry, and if you're feeling a little gluttonous for punishment, you can go to non-shuriken mode, which gives you only melee attacks. I'm not doing that. As for level, that's difficulty, from easiest to hardest, level 1 to level 3. Now if we set it to level 2 and go back to the title screen... Shadow Dancer 2? Huh. How about if we set it to level 3? Yep, Shadow Dancer 3. Sega, I don't believe that's how sequels work. Anyway, we're going to go with level 2 because it's the nice middle-of-the-road option, and also it's the most difficult one that I can actually beat consistently without resorting to lots of save states. Alrighty then, let's play some Shadow Dancer. 2, I guess. And we'll kick it off in the burning downtown. Except for the last one, each stage will be divided into 3 sub-stages, with the third being the boss fight. And we've got our standard shurikens, as many as we want this time, and if you hold down the attack button that fills the dog meter at the bottom of the screen, fill that up and let go of the button, and Yamato will attack the nearest enemy in front of him, if any. As in the other games, we have a melee attack at close range, and oh no, a gun haver! Get him, Yamato! When you sick Yamato on an enemy, he grapples with them for a while, also forcing them to stand up, but if you let him fight with them too long, he'll get hit, and will turn into a puppy for some reason. Now, baby Yamato is cute as the dickens, but lacks in any tactical application, so we'll want to restore him as soon as possible. Fortunately, as soon as you finish a stage or rescue a hostage, that'll return him to his full-grown self. Also, walking into a huge explosion of fire from a manhole doesn't hurt for some reason. Now, there's sort of a tiered jumping system to this game. If you've got an area above you that you're close enough to jump onto, you just press up and jump and you'll do a big leap onto it. Jumping down works the same way. Some hostages, when rescued, will give you a power-up, which replaces your stars with fireballs and your melee attacks with glowing punches and kicks. That there is a hidden one-up, we'll be finding more throughout the game. The most important thing about the power-up is that your fireballs can penetrate enemy defenses, and since there are lots of enemies in this game with shields or blocking ability, that's really handy. In fact, one of the nastiest things about level 3 difficulty is that there are no power-up hostages, so you can never rely on that guard break. And that's our first substage. We get a bonus for unused ninjutsu, which in this game always works like a smart bomb, wiping out all enemies on screen or doing 2 hits of damage to a boss. We get 1 ninjutsu per substage or life, whichever comes first. And right away we're introduced to a new enemy, the armadillo guy. If you send Yamato at them while they're rolling, he bounces off, but that doesn't count as him getting hurt, so he doesn't chipify. When the armadillo guys are unrolled, they are dog vulnerable, so it's really just a timing thing. Same with these green shield throwing guys. You don't want to sick Yamato on them when they're blocking because that will get him hurt, but when they're throwing a shield, then you can have the dog attack, and that's a pretty good way to deal with them. Also, the melee will go through their shields, so that works pretty well too. And there you see how the armadillo guys like to actually attack. They roll into you to stagger you, then go for the killing blow with their claws. Most enemies in this game will not actually do you any harm if you just touch them. You'll just get knocked back a little bit. They have to actually hit you with a projectile or some kind of attack animation to actually kill you. There is a single exception, just one enemy type with an actual death touch, but we won't be seeing them until stage 3, and even from that point onward they're pretty rare. There you see the fireball's guard penetrating property in action. Very useful, and something I assure you is sorely missed in the highest difficulty level. And there you see how useful it can be that Yamato forces an enemy to stand up, a really good way of getting them to poke their heads out from behind cover, and another secret one up. Yay! One thing that's kind of unfortunate about the power-up is that unlike the POW in Revenge of Shinobi and 3, you cannot carry it from stage to stage, so you can never bring it into a boss fight. And speaking of boss fights, we're about to have our first one, and oddly enough, it is, for my money, the second hardest boss in the game, second only to the end boss. Why they made this guy the boss of the first stage, I have no idea, because to this day he gives me a certain amount of sphincter pucker factor. You can see the boss's health bar at the top of the screen, those fireballs below the high score. And this guy likes to do big stomps that cause bits of debris, while also breathing high and low fireballs, and weaving your way between the fire and the debris is actually pretty tight, and therein lies the challenge. But we've done it. And again, for my money, that is actually the toughest boss fight with the exception of the very last one. Most of the bosses in Shadow Dancer are really no big deal, and most of the difficulty is in the levels, but never mind that, we've got a bonus stage. Shoot all ninjas. That's not very tolerant of you, Shadow Dancer. But yes, we're jumping off a building for God knows reason and trying to wipe out 50 ninjas on the way down. If we take out all 50, that's 3 extra lives, 49 you get 2, and for 48 you get a single one-up. Back in the day I was actually pretty consistent about getting all 50 at least on the first bonus stage, but these days forget it, I am not very good at these anymore. Only missed 2 though, which is pretty good for me now. And we get a single one-up out of that. I'll take it. And with that, we are on to our second proper stage, Battle on the Railway. Well, this part of town seems to be in better shape. I guess Union Lizard hasn't started the firebombing here yet. Or maybe they need the rail lines. In any case, this is going to be our first introduction to enemy ninjas, and the blue ones are kind of middle of the road. They're tougher than the yellow ones that we'll see a little later, but not as bad as the red ones. The shtick with the blue ninjas is that they will slowly crawl their way towards you, blocking your stars with their swords, and at a certain distance they'll break into a run and come at you with a sword attack. But when they start running, they drop their guard, and that's when you can drop them. Also, with one exception that we'll see very late in the game, all enemy ninjas will take 2 normal hits to bring down, so they're also a little more durable than your average foe. They also like to pop out of the background at inopportune times, and later on the game is going to get very evil with those enemy placements. Now, down under the bridge there we have another hidden extra life, so we'll want to jump down real quick and see what height the gun guys shoot at. Okay, guy on the right shoots low, so we'll want to take him out quickly. And we can duck under the second guy's bullet. And there's our hidden life. And we get 2 extra lives for that. Yamato has an unfortunate habit of jumping into death pits, but miraculously a fresh dog will always drop from the sky just a few seconds later. That helicopter isn't anything we have to worry about right away, but it is foreshadowing of things to come. In fact, you may remember seeing it in the attract mode at the very beginning. And the gimmick for this substage is a big fence separating the foreground and background, and we'll be using the tiered jumping system to vault over it. Nothing too complicated to deal with, but it is going to factor into our strategy a bit. And here's our first red ninja. They are a huge pain in the ass. They actually don't have any ground level attacks, which is kind of their big weakness, but their usual habit is to hop up into the air and try and come down on you with their sword point. Their guard is very tight, and their jumping aim is pretty good. In fact, I would say that red ninjas are the most aggravating enemy for the vast majority of the game. The only thing that's worse is the last enemy ninja type, and we won't be encountering those until the very end game. As you saw back there on the rail car, Shadow Dancer also absolutely loves to ambush you with ninjas while you're in a tight spot or dealing with other enemies. I thought there might be another hidden life pickup hidden around there somewhere, but I guess not. And now we're ready to move on to the second boss. And this weird wall face thing is, for my money, much easier than the first boss. It only has one attack, and that's sending out its big snaky hands at you every time it reappears on a new place on the wall. Now, you do have to be ready to react and put some distance between you and the face whenever it reappears, just so it doesn't get you caught with those hands, but that's not difficult to do at all. And you can always do a panic bomb sort of thing. That is, if you're about to get grabbed by the hands, you can always pop your ninjutsu and save yourself. It's also worth noting that only the hands themselves will kill you. Getting bumped by the arms will just stagger you a bit. See? Piece of cake. And it's bonus stage time again. But you know what, Shadow Dancer? Maybe I don't want to shoot all ninjas. I'm not really feeling it today. I think I'm just gonna enjoy a nice base jump and watch the boys do their wacky triangle jump dance. How you doing, guys? Having a good time? I don't know why you do what you do, but you do it well. Alright, you have a good one. Yep, if you shoot absolutely no ninjas, you get what I like to call the shame bonus, and get a 1-up. And on we go to Lady Liberty. Man, no deaths going into stage 3. I'm actually doing really well here. Much better than usual. Once again, the value of using Yamato to make enemies pop up out of cover reveals itself. Now, did you see that green guy that appeared for just a moment there before I shot him? Those are the only enemy type that has a death touch. They do not have to do any sort of striking or attacking animation to kill you. Any contact will do. You touch, you die. But there really aren't very many of them. Remember what I was saying about going into Stage 3 with no deaths? There's our first. And just like I mentioned in the intro, this is a game where any single hit will bring you down. No life bar and no second chances. Matter of fact, there is nothing in the game that will enable you to take a hit without dying. Unlike Revenge in Shinobi 3, in which if you had the POW, your next hit would make you lose the POW but take no damage, the hostage power-up will not save you here. Good job, Yamato, that was pretty slick. In addition to the tension of being so relatively vulnerable, one thing I like about Shadow Dancer is that you can use the tiered jumping system to kinda pop up behind enemies that aren't aware of your presence and take them out real quick. Just feels a little more ninja-like than most of what happens in the other Shinobis. And over there on the right you saw there was a hidden life pickup. So we'll have to work our way around and get to that from above. I do find it kind of curious that your 1-up or 2-up pickups are the Union Lizard symbol. I kind of panicked there and hit the ninjutsu button, so that's going to be our first use of magic for the game. We had the tornado ninjutsu there. There's a fire one, a wind one, and a meteor one. But the differences are strictly cosmetic. They all work in exactly the same Smart Bomb fashion. And aside from one relatively stupid death, that didn't go too badly. Stage 3-2 is going to be that elevator we saw in the attract mode. And outside of boss fights, this is the only stretch in which you have no hostages to worry about. However, this is a substage that tends to be pretty good at killing me, because there are lots and lots of enemy ninjas, including a few moments when you get dogpiled by 3 or 4 reds at a time. There's also the helicopter that just went by, and when you see that fly by vertically, you want to be ready for it to approach from the same side with a sweep of machine gun fire. Further compounding the problem is the fact that while relatively short, this substage has absolutely no checkpoints, so you have to do the whole elevator ride at one shot. And I absolutely hate this wave of 4 reds. I just do not want to fuck around with them, and I almost always pop a ninjutsu there. There's another reason I like to use a ninjutsu there, because it's really hard to take out the 4 reds before the helicopter goes by, and that is just too much of a hairball for me to deal with. That is the disadvantage to popping a ninjutsu at the time I usually do, because right before the end of the stage there's still going to be a moment in which 3 reds all rush you at once, and while certainly preferable to dealing with 4 at a time, with a helicopter about to come out, it's still kind of a problem. In fact, because I usually don't bother fucking around the normal way with the 4 red ninjas, I would say that the slightly lesser clusterfuck of 3 reds is one of the more reliably unkilling moments in the game. And the fact that it comes mere seconds before the stage ends is just a heartbreaker. Thought maybe I would slip through there without my ninjutsu, but that just wasn't gonna happen. Although it does demonstrate that if you use your ninjutsu after the helicopter appears, you can cancel out the strafing run. Alright, let's see if we can do this with a little less death this time. Hey, not bad. Not bad at all. Weren't we just up on the torch? Well, never mind, it's time for another boss fight. And our opponent this time will be this slightly kinky lady. Actually, buzzsaws are way too kinky for me. Green balloons! Green balloons! She's not respecting my safe word at all. Nonetheless, I would once again say this is a much easier boss fight than the first one. She only has one attack, which is throwing out that buzzsaw. The only thing really difficult about dealing with it is that there is a slight delay between the saw hitting the ground and it scooting across the floor at you. So it is sometimes a little easy to jump the gun and do your jump a little too early and land on the buzzsaw, but really no big deal. Oh, I was actually a little late that time. That's unusual for me. Still, I would say that really the boss fights in Shadow Dancer are just not the major source of difficulty. I really die a lot more often in the stages than I ever do in the boss fights, and dying against this boss is really unusual. Ah well. Wouldn't be an episode if I played a thing without a little bit of the old recording luck. And really, I haven't been having too much of that. This is, I would say, an above-average run for me. Most of the deaths I have experienced have been kind of stupid, but, you know, still not very many deaths overall. I'll take it. Something I should also note is that it is always possible to cancel out one of her buzzsaw throws with an appropriately timed shuriken, so while difficult, it is technically possible to finish off this boss without her ever getting a chance to attack. Time for another base jump, and if I were being strictly practical, I would be going for the shame bonus every time, just because these days I'm not very good at hitting 48 or more. But that would be kind of boring to watch, so I'm gonna do my best. And my best is clearly not gonna cut it. Yep, if you hit less than 48 ninjas, all you get is points. And now we are headed in the darkness. This is going to be the last standard format stage of the game. Indeed, Shadow Dancer is pretty short. The final stage, number 5, is going to be slightly different in format than what we've seen before, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Stage 4-1 I would say is not too bad overall, although it does have some relatively stressful moments of dealing with groups of reds while also navigating uneven terrain. I would say the best rule for dealing with Stage 4 in general is just to proceed slowly and always bump off enemies one at a time whenever you have a choice in the matter. Sometimes you will have to deal with groups, and that's just life, but more often than not, if you creep forward gradually and remove enemies as soon as they appear, you'll be able to manage the number that you have to deal with simultaneously, and that is a really good way of keeping yourself alive throughout this area. Alright, just a couple more hostages and a little bit of platforming action before we hit the exit. Having the hostage power-up helps a lot here because it lets you get through these armadillo guys and a couple of red ninjas at the end without having to deal with their blocking abilities. Ah, 4-2. I have a real love-hate relationship with this stage. It's pretty tense and fairly good at killing me, but I also think it's a really good level design. As you can see, it's quite dark and only sporadically illuminated by shafts of light coming down through holes in the cave ceiling. Sorry, Yamato. Fortunately, there's a hostage right beyond the shield guy there that'll restore him to proper size. And speaking of Yamato, there's a benefit to him in this stage that never really came up before. You've probably noticed by now that whenever there's an enemy in his line of sight, he barks like a maniac, and normally this doesn't accomplish anything more than perhaps eventually getting on your nerves. However, here, it can be an indicator that there's an enemy ahead that you haven't been able to see yet, so your faithful hound can be kind of a canary in the coal mine to let you know there's danger ahead. Whenever he's going waff waff waff, you'll want to proceed carefully, maybe spam some shurikens ahead of you, or even send him ahead to scout out the enemy, and then you can see him grappling in the darkness, and that'll give away the enemy's position. Like I said, he's a good boy. The dark stretches can really put me on edge when dealing with gaggles of enemy ninjas like this. I don't know why I said gaggled. It's kind of a stupid name for a group of ninjas. Then again, I don't know what the proper terminology would be. I think a murder of ninjas is pretty apropos. And just as in 4-1, having the hostage power-up is very handy here, because you can just spam fireballs ahead and blow through all of your enemy's blocking ability. And we're through, and that means it's time for another boss fight. This time we'll be taking on this living fire wheel as we plummet toward the earth on a falling slab of stone, and just like most boss fights in Shadow Dancer, it's pretty easy. It'll circle you in alternating clockwise and counterclockwise directions, occasionally stopping to spew out a ring of fire at you. Every time it stops, you'll have just a moment or two to slip a star through before it flares up and launches out its salvo. And all you really need to do to keep out of harm's way is maintain a respectful distance, watch for it to slow down, and try and get your shots in when it stops. And if you don't get your shots in, just start backing away, and it often helps to jump a little bit toward the end of the salvo, just in case one of the fire puffs gets a little too close to your feet. Really, that's about all there is to it. And while it's easier said than done, just like the third boss, this is another one where it's technically possible to take it down without it ever getting a chance to attack. Every time you hit the core, you do cancel its attack, so if your timing and aim are exceptionally true, you can shoot the core every time the wheel comes to a stop, and it'll never get a single chance to flare up. It would be neat if the game did something to acknowledge this if you pulled that off here or against the third boss, but sadly, if memory serves me right, it doesn't. Well, we're gonna get one last session of extreme sports, and appropriately enough to wrap up in the darkness, it's gonna be in the dead of night. Unfortunately, I don't think having a nice dark background against which to see the ninjas is gonna help me any, but at least it looks nice with the city all lit up in the background. Yep, this is gonna be well below the extra life threshold. And we don't even get the 5-digit bonus. Oh well, more importantly, we've arrived at the 5th and final round, the headquarters of Union Lizard. And as I mentioned earlier, this stage is put together a little differently. It's going to be a series of 5 rooms, and a 6th for the final boss, and each room is going to be kind of a little final exam featuring a specific type of enemy. Our first room deals, as you can see, with the gun guys, and they'll be placed in a way that's kind of inconvenient for us, so we'll have to use some careful timing and some skillful use of Yamato in order to make it through unscathed. So far, not too bad. This is going to be a little tricky. But nothing we can't handle. Eh, Yamato? Waff waff. Room 2 is going to be our final exam for the armadillo guys. This one can be a little bit dangerous when they start coming at you in groups of 2 and 3, because you can get bowled around a little when they all rush at you and set up for their final claw strikes. Just like that. Oh well. Fortunately, each room does count as a checkpoint, so you only need to restart at the beginning of the last one you got to. Alright, once more without all the dying. That'll do nicely. Oops, sorry, Yamato. When he has to cover a complicated bit of territory like that with various heights and dips and such, that can throw off my timing a bit. Nothing unmanageable though, and that hidden one-up that was very easy to find does not go unappreciated. Especially when that happens. Alright, third time's a charm, right? That almost went very wrong. One good bit of news is if you jump over them or otherwise cause them to roll right past you, they'll just keep on going and disappear. And we can certainly use that to our advantage. And when that's not possible, a little melee action will usually do the trick. Just a little further. Room 3 is going to have us dealing with those touch of death guys. Oh, that was really stupid. Not sure what I was trying to do there. Well, at least it was just inside the door, so we don't lose much progress there. The dark patch at the top of the screen can be a little obscuring, but certainly nothing compared to what we had to deal with in Stage 4-2. Rather nice thing about the Stage 5 layout in general is whenever there's a hidden one-up, they tend to put it in a place that you're likely to hit even by accident. That does not go unappreciated. Here, on the other hand, is something I don't appreciate at all, the room of color-coded ninjas. There are some pretty beefy ambushes here with some of the most asshole-ish enemy placement in the game. Anytime you see an inconvenient assembly of crates like this, you may rest assured that Shadow Dancer is about to pull some unseemly bullshit. Like this. 3 reds and a blue, no fun at all. Well, okay, when it goes that well, maybe a little fun. That, not so much. Okay, I can't believe I survived that. That was some really unfortunate positioning on my part, and I think it was pure luck that I survived. Ooh, pretty lucky jump kick there, too. Ah, well, the luck couldn't hold out forever. That almost always gets me at least once on any given run. I tend to forget that the blue guys, that first jumping slash of theirs is just the right height to tag me off the top of a 2-crate stack. This time, however, having taken the obligatory one death from it, I'll be watching for it and hopefully won't get caught a second time. The Reds, on the other hand, yeah. Might have to drop a ninjutsu in here at some point if these trends continue. Now mind you, I would rather save my magic for the next room, but hey, in the extremely likely event that I get killed in the next room, I'll get it back anyway. Speaking of getting killed... Alright, come on. You're starting to get a little scarce on lives here, and we want to get that no continue run, don't we? Alright, next is the big red ambush. Don't choke, don't choke, don't choke. Hey, good job, me. And you know what? There's no sense in saving my ninjutsu for the next room if it means I don't make it to the next room, so hell with it. And fuck this noise, I'm out of here. Alright, room 5. We finally get to meet the final and worst enemy in the game, the Black Ninja. Not only do they have a combination of the moves of the red and blue ninjas, they take 3 hits to kill, making them the most durable non-boss enemy in the game. One thing that helps about Room 5 is that even though the enemies are of a nastier nature, most of the ambushes aren't quite as massive as they are in the previous room. You usually don't have to deal with quite as many black ninjas at a time. So far, so good. Just gotta pick up this last hostage, and oh my goodness, that is too many ninjas. So much for smaller ambushes. Yes, Yamato, I know there are ninjas in the room with me. They're not that stealthy. There we go. Never be afraid to retreat in Stage 5 when you have to. There's actually no timer on this stage if you hadn't noticed, so I think they kind of expect you to take your time and have to fall back to more advantageous ground from time to time. Alright, time to make a break for it. And our magic helpfully reveals the 2 up near the exit. And at last, we've fought our way through the Union, and it's time to take on the Lizard himself. Most of his offense here is actually going to be summoning Black Ninja minions. Right now, there's nothing we can do to hurt him. In the rare occasion that he actually does a direct attack on you, he'll reveal his weak point, which is in his neck. We also see for the first time black ninjas here that can roll across the ground. It's possible to get a shuriken through their guard while they're doing that, and if you're really, really brave, you can try and melee slash them. There's the key attack there. If you're accurate, you can get 2 hits on him per cycle, but I only got 1 that time. My aim is not always the best. As I was saying, the rolling guys, you can get a shot through them while they're rolling sometimes, and if your timing is really good, you can hit them with a melee attack, but trying the melee approach is a really good way to get yourself killed. It's very, very tricky timing. So what I usually prefer to do is just jump over them, because they'll just keep on rolling and never be seen again. You've probably already figured this out from watching, but if the ninjas will allow it, whenever those fireballs come down, you want to hide under one of the platforms. If the ninjas are keeping you away from the safe spot, then it is possible to dance between the fireballs, but that is very risky and decidedly not the preferred method. One other important thing about the lizard fight: in any other boss fight, if you pop your ninjutsu, it'll knock 2 hits off their health bar. The lizard is the only exception to that. If you try and use your magic while his weak point is out, he'll just cover it up again. That said, your magic can be very valuable here to clear out the minions or save yourself from an impending hit by them. Oh, that was really careless. Well, lesson learned. Being under the platform may not be enough, you kinda have to watch your specific positioning under the platform. Alright, got both my hits in that cycle. That's a good start. And there you see what I mean about it being possible to get your shurikens through the guard of the rolling ninjas. Not something that can be done really precisely or reliably, but if you have time to throw out some stars, it never hurts to try. Alright, halfway there. Yeah, that was getting a little too busy for my blood. Alright, we've used our smart bomb, but we're halfway there. Three-quarters. One more good 2-hit cycle, and we'll have busted the Union. The Lizard Union. Local 48. Alright, time for the floating head of doom. Let's make it count. Hallelujah, Hollywood! Bobblehead dance, bobblehead dance. You're welcome, Sega. And be he Joe or Hayate, the important thing is our man has saved the Big Apple, which can now return to its comforting routine of regular, non-lizard-related crime. Not really a great ending here, but I think Shadow Dancer has ably proved two things. One, that an arcade-style shinobi on the Genesis can work pretty well, and two, that ninja dogs are totally sweet. As for that to be continued, it's automatically going to bump us up to the next difficulty and show Shadow Dancer 3 on the title screen, but you don't get anything special for beating Shadow Dancer 3. It's the exact same ending, only instead of to be continued, it'll just say the end. So that's really about all there is to show you, folks. I'm going to be out of town for a week starting Wednesday the 19th, and I don't fancy my chances of getting another video together before I leave, so I do apologize for the downtime. As always, I thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you in a few weeks, and until then, for Joe, Hayate, and Yamato, I am Un, and that's game, Hendrix. Today's adventures of a dog and his ninja were brought to you by Justin Carpenter, Nolden, Zangamarth, Charlie Dunst, Anonymous Benefactor, John Madigan, Sanguine Games, Misha Van Doren, Frank Grizzy, Tim J., Lolo De Puzzlo, Joshua C. Ritchie, Jared C. Rice, Darren Chow, Sonic Rose, EX Potemkin, Alicia Goranson, Argyle Jelly, Mechasaurus, DG Jono, Doug Russell, August Fortnite, Patrick Bellinger, Rob Lyons, and the rest of my very generous patrons. Much love going out to all commenters, subscribers, and watchers. Have a great weekend, a happy Halloween, and I'll see you next game.